Tired of being called a bigot for opposing a terrorist big payday? I'm Brian Lilly with the Rebel.media. Are you fed up? Are you just done? Are you sick and tired of being called a racist, a bigot, anti-Muslim, an Islamophobe, a so-and-so, just because you oppose making a self-confessed terrorist a multimillionaire, someone that actually admitted to being happy at the news that he'd thrown the grenade that killed Sergeant Christopher Speer? Well, I am, I can tell you that much. I'm tired of Toronto Star columnists trying to explain to me, trying to tell me that if I just understood what happened to poor Omar Khadr, if I just knew the facts, then I'd be happy that instead of charging this guy with treason, that Justin Trudeau apologized on behalf of me and all of you and gave him $10.5 million. But I do know the facts. I covered the Supreme Court decisions in 2008 and 2010. But hey, that doesn't mean anything. What do I know? I'm just some kind of racist because I don't back this deal. Well, apparently 71% of Canadians, including 61% of Liberal voters and 64% of NDP voters, must be racist as well, because the activist left and the chattering classes say, if you don't like this deal, then you're a racist. We can't all be racists. Look, the latest coming out in support of Khadr is from the well-funded, American-funded left-wing group LeadNow. They're running a campaign to support Omar Khadr. Now, personally, I just think they've got a bit of envy. Within days of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation launching their petition to stop the payment to Omar Khadr, the CTF gained 130,000 signatures. National Director Aaron Woodrick told me he's never seen a petition have so much support in so little time at the CTF. At Rebel, we launched SpearKids.com. We've raised more than $225,000 for the real victims of Omar Khadr, the children of Sergeant Christopher Speer, the man that Khadr killed when he said he was happy with throwing the grenade. And now, in the middle of that, LeadNow wants to show that Canadians stand with Omar Khadr. I know they don't, but let's show what they're claiming. They're upset that conservative MPs and people like myself have spoken to American media outlets about this Khadr deal. Americans are outraged with the Khadr deal. But when I've told them on Fox News or on talk radio or elsewhere that the majority of Canadians don't back the deal, they actually feel better. But LeadNow, well, they claim most Canadians support Khadr, the terrorist. We need to push back and remind the world that the majority of people in Canada stand up for human rights, and we're standing with Omar Khadr. Not so fast there, Skippy. They have no polls to back up their points as I do. I already talked about the 71% that oppose it, the Angus Reid survey. The best they have is an Abacus data poll that still shows the majority of Canadians and even the plurality of millennial voters think the government is doing a bad job when it comes to the Khadr file. Now, I'm sure Abacus and one of their main people, Bruce Anderson, the father of Trudeau's Director of Communications, longtime defender of all things liberal on Peter's panel over at CBC, I'm sure they'll try and spin this as good news for their messiah, Justin, but no numbers from any pollster back up the idea put out by LeadNow that Canadians stand with Khadr. Well, let's look at what else they say. They say the Conservatives just launched an all-out campaign to attack Omar Khadr and the Liberals' compensation package for violating his charter rights and letting him languish in an offshore prison camp where he was tortured for over a decade. Interesting points they make there. There's a couple of problems with them. First, it makes you think it was the Conservatives that violated Khadr's rights. No, didn't happen at all. It was the actions of a Liberal government led by Paul Martin that was responsible for actually violating Khadr's rights. That's according to the Supreme Court that they keep invoking. We'll get to that in a minute. Jean Chrétien was the Liberal PM before Martin, who was in power when Khadr was picked up in Afghanistan in 2002. And I keep hearing that Khadr's reaction was, and pardon my language here, fuck Khadr. He didn't want to help the little terrorist because Chrétien had gotten the father out of jail in Pakistan, and then the father turned around and helped finance 9/11. Secondly, look at the end of that last quote I put up from LeadNow. Violating his charter rights and letting him languish in an offshore prison camp where he was tortured for over a decade. He was tortured for over a decade? Again, excuse my language, but bullshit. Pure bullshit. Omar Khadr was not tortured for a decade. In fact, there's a solid argument against him being tortured at all. He was part of the so-called frequent flyer program. That's sleep deprivation program. But is that torture? There's an argument that says, no, it's not. I can tell you that no Canadian court, never mind an American court, has ever said that Khadr was tortured. Omar Khadr wasn't waterboarded. He never had bamboo shoots shoved under his fingernails. He didn't have jumper cables shoved on sensitive bits and then send electricity through it. He was sleep deprived. Is that torture? Some say yes, some say no. Now let me quote from former Liberal leader Michael Ignatieff writing about this issue in 2004, at a time when it was in wide discussion, in no less a liberal bastion than the New York Times, on whether this or other tactics were torture. Ignatieff clearly said no. Permissible duress might include forms of sleep deprivation that do not result in lasting harm to mental or physical health, together with disinformation and disorientation, like keeping prisoners in hoods that would produce stress. When Ignatieff was an independent academic and journalist, he said sleep deprivation wasn't torture. Sure, he maybe changed his mind after he had to sing for his leftist liberal supper as leader of the party, but back then, he said it wasn't. LeadNow also wants to claim that Khadr was a child soldier, and therefore anything he did doesn't really matter. It doesn't count. Omar Khadr was a child soldier when he was brought to Guantanamo Bay for allegedly killing an American soldier, an accusation that's never been proven in court. Again, not so fast, Skippy. It was never proven in court because he confessed and copped a plea deal, just like his claims against the Canadian government that we have to pay him $10.5 million. That was never tested in court because Justin Trudeau decided to pay him, negotiate before a single day in court. Now, let me address the idea that he was a child soldier. I keep hearing Khadr was a child soldier. Well, he was under 18. He's a child soldier. It was an violation of international law that he was ever charged. Is that true? The UN says no. The Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court says no. They define a child soldier as under 15. Quote, the Rome Statute criminalizes the conscription, enlistment, or use in active hostilities of child soldiers under the age of 15, both in international and non-international armed conflicts. Under the age of 15. Not 18, but under 15. The Canadian Forces still allows 16-year-olds to sign up. Yes, there are calls within that document for state actors to keep those under 18 from the front line. Doesn't say they can't fight, though. What state, by the way, was Omar Khadr fighting? Fighting for? The answer was he wasn't fighting for any state. He was fighting for the Ummah, the caliphate, the idea that Islam would dominate. But I'm the bigot, I'm the racist, even though Islam isn't a race. As for the other claims that Khadr was denied the right to a fair trial, he was part of appeals processes and went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. That was under the old system, and that system changed because of those rulings. Khadr has admitted to his crimes. He was asked time and again if he confessed under duress, and he said no, until a Canadian Liberal court let him out earlier than he should have been released. Then he said it was duress. Somehow, Khadr has gone from a terrorist that we used to talk about charging here on Canadian soil to someone that is a complete victim to the left and someone we need to pay with money from the federal treasury. Let me tell you, Omar Khadr should have been charged with treason the minute he landed. The fact that he wasn't, that's an actual shame. And that brings me to the last lie that LeadNow is peddling that I want to deal with. They claim the government had to do this. From their letter, their email blast once again, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the government failed to uphold Khadr's charter rights, something the government does not have a choice about. It's true the Supreme Court did rule Khadr's rights were violated, but they never ruled that he had to be compensated. Not now, not ever. LeadNow only links the two ideas, but they also claim that legal experts said the government had to settle and pay Khadr big time. Fine. You've got your legal experts. I've seen those stories. I've also found and spoken to legal experts that have said the government could have won, or they could have appealed if they lost. They could have ended up paying Khadr a heck of a lot less, even if they did lose. Put 5 lawyers in a room, you're going to get 7 opinions. So 3 lawyers that you found, that doesn't cut it. Any right-thinking, sensible person would be outraged that the government gave this man $10.5 million. Most of Canada is outraged. You are in the right here. You are part of the great silent majority. And it doesn't matter how many times lefty activists like LeadNow or their hallelujah chorus in the media claim this was the right thing to do. You know better. They want tens of thousands of signatures to show Omar Khadr that, well, they stand with him. Well, we have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Khadr's real victims. If you haven't given yet, please go to spearkids.com and make a donation. And please, finally, share this video so your friends know that they're not alone. Post it to Facebook, Twitter, email it to them. The world needs to know that most Canadians are on the side of the righteous. If you like the Rebel video you just watched, never miss another one again. Click here to subscribe. And hey, have you donated yet at SpearKids.com?